Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friends Sam Clement and Courtney Trush.
Hey, John.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing fantastically. And you know, gang, here we are at the end of 2021. And at the end of 2020, I was saying, if only 2021 could be better than 2020. And I guess in a lot of ways it was. But still, here we are. 2021 has not worked out the way that I thought it was going to be or was going to. However, you know, taking a look and thinking back at where we were in 2020, we were trying to predict out what the future looks like. Remember, Sam, Courtney, we did the New Normal series here at Oakworth Capital Bank and made a lot of predictions about the future, and some of them have turned out to pass. But really, I think maybe all of everyone's markets prediction that this time is completely different. Everyone's going to work remotely, all that good stuff. Maybe didn't completely come out to pass as much as perhaps people would have thought.
Well, I know early this year, I guess, when we were kind of looking through some of our predictions, and a lot of them we both agreed were too early to tell whether they were right or not. And I think that's still kind of true for this. I mean, I think back to, you know, even the 2000 internet bubble, how a lot of those companies and those predictions were right. They were just right 15, 20 years later instead of 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. So I think some of these predictions that we made are going to be much longer term trends than even just 1 or 2 years. But you're absolutely right that things necessarily haven't maybe turned out in the first year how some people thought they would.
I mean, are you really surprised, though, that there were a dip in certain industries? I mean, obviously, being able to leverage... Well, being able to leverage, like, you know, working from home, okay, so there's certain companies that have, all right, digital signing ability, or that they have, you know, workout equipment and membership that is based off of being centrally at home. Well, yes, initially, if you bought that before, right at early 2020, you reap the benefits. But at some point, y'all would expect it to drop off, wouldn't you? Like, as we find, I guess, now in 2022, what our new normal will be.
Now is the point in the program that we have a caveat that says that we are not market makers in any security. We serve as agent in the marketplace for all of our clients and not as principals in the transaction. We, as I mentioned, do not make a market in the names that we're about to talk about, and none of us own them directly. All right, Sam, what do you think about that?
I like it. Got it.
Very good.
There you have
Check.
it. Check. So, no, I mean, Courtney, you're absolutely right. There were some names last year, notably Peloton, and I think maybe even DocuSign and Zoom, some of these other ones, where everyone kind of jumped on board saying, hey, this time's different. This is what's going to be, and push really the multiples of some of these companies way out through the stratosphere. Just absolutely. And it made sense at the time. Take Peloton, which has a very good product, very good technology. And when people can't go to the gym, those people that want to exercise religiously, they had to have an option. And this is sort of like a gym at your house, spinning classes, all that good stuff. And same with DocuSign. And no one can meet in person, so send electronic documentations and all that. And that's all well and good. However, with some of these companies, they're clear alternatives, a pen and paper, I think, Sam, is what you said. And, just going outside.
A gym. Riding a real bike.
Riding a real bike and what have you. So, I am old enough. I'm significantly older than Sam. And, just
significantly older than Courtney as well. Thank you very much, John.
That I remember truly the lead up to the tech bubble, and all you needed to have was a line of credit from the bank and some sort of business model that said .com in it, and you could make millions of dollars. And I remember there were companies back in the day that said you can buy your groceries online, and I remember thinking, how in the world is that going to work? How am I going to be able to thump a melon online? Or how am I going to be able to take a look and see whether or not I want the produce, want the meat, all that stuff? And the truth is, it didn't work out back then, some of these. The buy pets.com, people were going to buy pets. Yeah. None of that stuff worked out. Amazon at the time was a bookstore, all that stuff. And some of the stuff was we put the cart way ahead of the horse on some of these things, but now take a look at buying your groceries online. I feel kind of like an old fart by actually going into the grocery, because every time I go in there, me
You're covered
and
with shoppers for other people.
either it's shipped or the company itself is doing it where you pick up and all that stuff. So people are doing that, and I would say probably maybe the valuations got a little stretched last year with some of these companies and the so-called new normal. That doesn't mean that the business models aren't good. That doesn't mean that that they aren't here to stay. It just means that we've started to value them based on growth rates that just simply weren't sustainable.
And that's the thing. These multiples to get that a lot of these companies had last year specifically, they were going to have to keep up this extreme growth rate that they were experiencing in a very unique environment for a much longer period of time. Then now we're starting to get things back to normal. And yes, these companies are still growing and they have strong growth rates. It's just probably not what it was last year, and rightfully so. Companies that are built on people staying at home rightfully aren't going to have the same growth rate this year as they had last year.
Now, Courtney, I'm kind of surprised with all the children, all the people that you have in your house that you don't have Pelotons, Lululemon Mirror, Tonals, all that stuff, because you have so much space for this stuff.
Yes, so much space, John, and so much time with so many children to be able to work out. No, and I would love. I mean, gosh, I think that it would be amazing to have a workout room and have those things. But hopefully in a few years I will have some time to myself.
What do you think about that, Sam?
Yeah,
he's got plenty of time to himself.
No, but Sam, I mean, when we were talking about the new normal, we did make a lot of predictions, and as you said, a lot of it's directional. But whenever you have sort of a black swan event or some sort of bubble, people assume, hey, it's here to stay. We're not going to have to play out. It's here. It's right now, here and now.
Yep.
And I think maybe that new normal that we've been talking about forever is. It's here, but it's just going to take a lot longer to get to the new normal. I mean, even things like remote work. I mean, last year we were talking about how, my gosh, here, even at Oakworth Capital Bank, we only had about 25, maybe 30% of the workforce was in the office, and that might even be a bit of a stretch. We're thinking, well, hell, we don't need to have everyone come back. Until all of a sudden, here we are this year, we have a fistful of people that are remote. Some people are hybrid, and the hybrid people, I seem to see them more than I ever have.
Yep.
So there's something to it. Yes, we have the technology to work remotely. Yes, that is going to be here for good. But that doesn't mean all the predictions for the demise of commercial real estate, which we had last year, I don't think that they've necessarily come to pass.
Yeah.
I'm curious too if y'all, what your thoughts are on if you think that there's any, correlation between people coming back and potentially lower productivity, because people talk, and yes, you could say that there argumentatively is better kumbaya, relationships and that you've built that rapport because people are back together, and maybe when you're remote you're less likely to call somebody and say, hey Sam, how was your day, what's going on, how was your weekend? People aren't going to have that conversation.
Well, the last time Sam, when you pulled out your guitar, I think we sang
around the campfire.
Well, we sang Michael Row Your Boat Ashore, Kumbaya, and then one, Courtney, that you might not remember. It's from Harry Chapin. It's called Circles, but that's. But that you might not remember those, but
we might be excluding the investment team with this conversation.
Those are just the ones that we sang at MYF back in the day. You do have a point. When I was here, because as you all know, I never went truly remote. There were a few weeks I had to quarantine because I was exposed or what have you. It was kind of strange. I mean, our coworker Adam Kirkland and I were really the only people on this side of our floor. One of the two people here, and we got all of our work done very quickly because there wasn't any sort of, hey, stick your head in and talk and be sociable and what have you. And there is a ton of that goes on when everyone comes back into the office. So I would say that, in terms of being efficient, you're right. I was able to go home before 5 every day last year and feel as though I've gotten all my work done, and now I can't do it. However, I would tell you this, Courtney, that while some people would say that the coffee cooler conversation, the sticking the head into the office might cut down on your productivity, I would also say that it's very beneficial for the long-term health of a company where you're working with people that you're building relationships, and you're even sharing information that could be beneficial whether you realize it or not. Sam, your thoughts?
Well, I think clearly there's several sides and opinions to this, and it's not kind of a black and white issue, and I think that kind of hits on why this is still so early in the process for it. Companies are still figuring it out. I mean, there's companies who are some of the biggest. They gained the most from people being stuck at home, and those companies still are saying we want our employees back in the office. So I think
Reed Hastings.
Yeah, Reed Hastings of Netflix. So Netflix is clearly one of the biggest companies to gain from people being stuck at home, and he was pushing for people being back in the office. But that aside, I think we are just still so early in it, and so early in a second sort of digital kind of revolution and working from home. I mean, not to get too far into the weeds, but even NFTs and like digital ownership of assets, and there's Web3 is the new hot term that people are using. We are just so early in kind of a second digital wave where you're not just on the internet, on websites, you're kind of in it. You own digital assets. You can own physical assets through digital platforms. And all of this, I think, wraps up with working remote and just this next level of integration with technology and web platforms.
And it's something to say of people being able to be comfortable, right? Like we talk about, basic things that now to maybe Sam and I, and maybe John, that when we were younger, we were thinking, oh my gosh, no, we'll never have it that way. We'll never be able to basically walk around with a computer in our pocket. That seems so foreign.
Well, when I was growing up in the 70s, I certainly thought that was going to happen. I thought everyone was going to have a computer in their pocket and what have you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's good. I think it's more of to say, like, are we set up to know how to manage people remotely? Are we set up, as a society to be ready for, Bitcoin? Some people are early adopters, but not everybody's like that. And whether it's certain generations dying off, or if it's
Merry Christmas,
or would people get their minds wrapped around it? I just wonder if this is like, this is a cultural change as well for businesses and, just our society as a whole.
Well, last year, I think we made some quantum leaps in sort of communication technology. Zoom, if my estimation, Zoom really wasn't that much of a thing before next year, and people are probably out there saying, yeah, it was. But you can think of what our video conferencing technology was like at Oakworth. It wasn't bad, but Zoom's so much better,
right,
in my estimation, than what we had in the conference rooms. And I would say that we weren't necessarily behind last year. And now we have Zooms, which is pretty easy, Teams, which is pretty easy. There are other ones that I used last year, and this does facilitate a lot of remote work. And you're probably right. Companies really don't know how to completely manage remote workers, and
company culture is so important.
Company culture is so important. So I think really that's kind of the working remotely, the new normal that everyone's predicting, is probably going to vary significantly from economic sector to economic sector, in my estimation.
Well, and I think go back. You were saying people picturing having computers in their pocket.
I was teasing.
I know, but people did for decades. People have expected these things to happen, and they've come true. Maybe just again 10, 20 years after, and you're
waiting
seeing
on the flying car.
Yeah, these things that everyone knows probably going to happen, and then it just ends up taking a little longer. And I think you're seeing it even with companies like Facebook renaming themselves Meta or Metaverse. And we're talking about Zoom and just staring at a screen and seeing other people, where they're already starting to talk about digitally being in the same room with other people. And that may be hard to wrap our brains around now, but I think that could be similar to what people were saying 10, 20, 30 years ago about having a computer in your pocket. It's hard to wrap your brain around that, but I think there will probably come a point where that is the new normal. Instead of, okay, I just see 4 squares of people on my computer, now I'm in the same room with them when I'm not in the same room with them.
In order to get that sort of thought process back when I was growing up, you had to eat little mushroom type things.
Things out in the woods.
Yeah, where are we going with this, John?
Listen, that's just what people told me. I have absolutely no idea. But Courtney, last year
might be time for a new disclosure on the podcast.
I don't think so. Not for me. Maybe for you. But last year, Courtney, when you were at home stepping over children and what have you, what did you think this year would look like, and what were your hopes for what a new normal would look like? Understand that we now have the ability to work remotely. Is it some sort of truly hybrid, or is it just flexibility? What do people want of your age?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we're all trying to just figure that out. I think my biggest concern last year was that my children would go back to school, that they would just not be in the house, because identified very quickly that I'm not a good educator. And that was affecting my relationship with my children. So I'm thankful that schools were back open. But I do think, I feel like there's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress to young families. I feel like men have stepped up maybe more so than in the past, that they are very hands-on with the raising of their children, with women being more in the workforce. And not saying that you weren't, John, because I'm just saying I know that Sam is going to be very hands-on, and my husband is very hands-on.
What are my kids' names again?
I know. Good thing you keep naming children after yourself. But all that
That's
to
right,
say,
John. That's right. Yeah.
Add a Roman numeral.
yes. But I think that the flexibility is key. I think that being able to work from anywhere is truly key, because that way you can both be very active in the raising of your children, but also be able to be, productive and, being a value add to companies. And I hope that companies are seeing that as well. It's somewhere in the middle, and everybody's different. Everyone's personality is different of how they work best. Every company's different, yes. But I think just being open-minded and not this strict old school mentality that you have to have a bottom and a seat to be productive is nice. That, and I appreciate Oakworth being on the forefront of that with other companies in our industry compared to other companies.
I mean, Sam, what do you think about what Courtney just said? I mean, she's putting it out there.
A lot of compliments to Oakworth.
It really is. It must be getting close to
bonus
review time.
Yeah.
So, Courtney, I think you're right, and I think sort of what we saw last year with some of the valuations and some of the growth multiples that we're putting on some of these, what I would call new normal companies and technologies, not dissimilar to what happened in 1998 and 1999. This time was different. This is what's going to happen. And we value these things way too much, and they've kind of come back to earth this year. However, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be around for a very long period of time. I think there is attractiveness to DocuSign. I do think that there is attractiveness to a Peloton or the Zoom technology and all that stuff. So I think these things are here to stay. I think we will eventually get to the new normal that Sam, the investment committee talked about last year. We put out our magazine regarding the new normal. It's just perhaps the predictions of the death of the old economy, the old way of doing things, were perhaps a little bit exaggerated last year. And that's kind of what I think we found out in 2021.
Yeah, it seems like early, not wrong, may kind of sum it up. A lot of these predictions may have been early for full adoption of it, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. I think the more we extend our time horizon for looking at whether we were right or wrong, I think the more right a lot of those predictions will be.
Yeah, and Courtney, you mentioned something about cryptocurrencies and just overall blockchain technology, and we're still trying to figure out NFTs and what have you, and you mentioned that too, Sam, and I think it's not a question, but I mean, the technology's here to stay. I mean,
right.
it just certainly is. In terms of Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of those other ones, there doesn't seem to be a significant barrier to entry to create your own cryptocurrencies. So we will see over the years new ones come and old ones go, and the old ones may not completely go away, but no one will buy them any longer, and it'll be real interesting to see what happens there. But we'll get a little bit more used to it. We'll be able to value things a little bit more appropriately, as we've been able to with internet companies and new economy stocks. And right now, it's not necessarily the Wild West, but we're just trying to figure out what the new normal is, both in terms of working from home, working remotely, working in the office, and then also the advancements in technology that we've had over the last several years.
It's a good summation.
Well, thank you, Courtney. Very complimentary here today. So, Sam, what do you say?
I think you're spot on.
We're really adding a lot, aren't we?
If Scott were in here, I'd tell him he was absolutely right.
Yeah.
I didn't tease it. Well, guys, thank you all so much for listening. We always have fun hearing from you also. If you have any comments or questions, please, by all means, let us know. You can always reach us at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. As always, if you want to read more or hear more of what we have to say or how we think, please, by all means, go to oakworth.com and take a look underneath the thought leadership tab for all kinds of interesting and awesome information. One last chance.
That's all I got.
That's all she wrote.
That's all I've got to do today too. Y'all take care.